I recently spent an entire week exploring the Universal theme parks within Orlando, Florida, because that's the only place that has 3 Wizarding World theme parks. But the question that kept popping up was, how do these make sense with the story as a whole? And today we're going to talk about it. This is a part of my Canon series. If you haven't checked out the rest of the series, make sure to hit that link up there, and that'll take you to the playlist of all of these videos. But one thing that keeps cropping up with the Harry Potter Wizarding World theme parks is, are these canon, or are these just a fun afterthought of, hey, we need to have some sort of story to go with the ride that may or may not go with the story itself? And if you're interested in just the whole story, or at least what I think the story is that it's trying to tell, I've got a video where I actually break down the entire story of the rides and how they all fit together, and maybe that it's in its own parallel Harry Potter universe. But today we are going to answer this definitively on if the Universal Studios parks are canon to the Harry Potter universe. So as always, there are 6 questions in the canon discussion that I have created to try to break down the complexity of the Harry Potter universe, because it's not as cut and dry as question number 1. Was it written by the author? Because we do have stuff that could be considered canon that isn't written by the author. So it makes it a little bit more complicated than just, was it written by the author? But let's go through the other 5 questions. Question number 1 being, was it written by the author? Question 2, does it add to the main story? Is it a sequel, a prequel? Does it just kind of add to the lore of the story, such as the Tales of Beetle the Bard, Quidditch Through the Ages, and Fantastic Beast, Hogwarts library set, or even Pottermore? Does it contradict or change the main story? Are characters doing stuff that they didn't do in the books or even the movies? Or does it just kind of fall within a weird timeline amalgamation of, well, some of it's from the 4th book, some of it's from the 6th book, but it seems like they're at the age of the 5th book? Question number 4, does it change the characters? Like, the difference between book Ron and movie Ron is movie Ron's dumb. Book Ron is not dumb. Question number 5, does it answer questions? And if it does it answer them simply? Because just because you answer a question but it brings up more questions, it kind of ruins the idea of, hey, look, we're answering a question that you probably never asked. For example, in Crimes of Grindelwald, here's a woman named Nagini who is a maledictus, which is a human that is cursed with a blood curse that turns them into a beast of some sort. Maybe always a snake, maybe other things, depending on what theorist you ask in the Harry Potter content creation space. I'm speaking of the theory that Luna Lovegood is a maledictus that turns into a wolf created by Super Carlin Brothers. But see, that's the thing. That makes it more complicated, because what does a maledictus turn into? Also, Nagini seemed like a good character. Why would she work with the second coming of Wizard Hitler? So those are things that kind of change in that question. And finally, question number 6, does it break what was previously set up? If there is a set of rules that, hey, look, here's how Expelliarmus works. Cool? All right, now we're going to do something completely different with Expelliarmus. It not just disarms you, but it also knocks you back 4 feet. Does that break the rules? I feel like it does. So the theme parks in Universal are a very difficult thing to answer these questions. It's easy, but also at the same time, it's not. For the first 2 parks, Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios Florida, or Hollywood or Japan, because the Hogsmeade from Iowa is also in Hollywood and Japan. So it kind of falls in the same category, but in Orlando, it is the predominant, here's where all of the rides are. You only get some of the rides in Japan and some of the rides in Hollywood, but you get all of the rides in Orlando. So that's where we're kind of basing everything off of. These take place parallel to the main story. And I'm just kind of doing a basic rundown. If you want the full story, make sure to check out the video. That's the quickest way to get the full story. And then come back. Now, we recently got a new addition to the whole story, and that's Universal's Epic Universe, which takes place both after Crimes of Grindelwald, but also after Deathly Hallows Part 2. And I say Part 2 because it does use Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint, and other movie characters likeness. So I feel like if this is going to be canon, it's canon to the movies, not to the books. And there's a couple reasons why, and we'll get a little bit into that. But it's complicated because now you have this section of the park which takes place between two different time periods, but also at the same time concurrently, and wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. There's a lot to this. So let's go through the 6 questions and answer them based on how the park is. So question number 1, was it written by the author? No. So she did have a lot of say in the ideas of the park. She was the one who basically helped design the park, but the final script for the rides was written by someone else. And it's based off of the movies specifically, which weren't directly written by the author in the first place. So this is like a 3 degrees removed from the original story that was written by the author. So right off the bat, you could basically answer this question. Is it canon? No, because we've kind of decided in this series that the movies are not canon. They are adaptations that are loosely attached to the movies. Like, you get the basic idea, but there are some slight changes which do cause problems for other situations, such as we don't know what happened to the dragon after Goblet of Fire, which does kind of get brought up in this. We don't know what happened to the time room after Order of the Phoenix because it didn't get destroyed. That kind of comes up in here. So it's just a weird thing. Like I've said, that if anything, it's canon to the movies, but even then there's a lot of other inconsistencies that don't really line up. So does it add to the main story in the way that the movies add to the main story? I think yes, where it expands the imagery of Hogsmeade, Diagon Alley. You know, you get to see these places in real life. And if you guys haven't been to Universal Studios Florida, Diagon Alley, it's breathtaking when you walk in, just on the immersiveness of the entire land. I think the least immersive part of the 3 lands is probably Epic Universe because you're just walking through the streets of Paris. To help build upon that immersiveness, yeah, you have people walking around that are like NPCs basically that just, you know, interact with the guest within the park, but as a whole it's less immersive because it kind of feels like the streets of Paris within Epcot, which is more immersive in my opinion. But it makes up for it when you walk into the Ministry. If you walk into Diagon Alley and you're kind of like, wow, you're gonna walk into the Ministry of Magic and just kind of cry because it's super immersive. And weirdly enough, it is more realistic than what's in the movies. I know the movies aren't real, but most of the movie sets were just styrofoam. So, you know, when you would see a wall that's painted green with the black and green stylization that you see in the movies, yeah, that's all it is it's foam. Where in here, it's real tile and it's a real building that's not CGI. Yeah, there's a couple, you know, illusions, but for the most part, it's more real than what the movie could ever do. And it's amazing. Number 3, does it contradict or change the main story? Now, this is where it gets a little more complicated. Yes, at least one of the rides heavily changes the story. So in the Escape from Gringotts, the ride, we are being taken on a tour by a goblin and Bill Weasley. During this tour, it just happens to be when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are breaking into Gringotts. Okay, so far that could still happen in the movie. But what happens in this ride that doesn't happen in the movie is Bellatrix and Voldemort show up and make things more complicated. And Bill shows up a lot more in a scene with Harry, Ron, and Hermione, but we are ultimately saved by Harry, Ron, and Hermione and the Ukrainian Iron Belly. Okay, but that didn't happen in the book or the movie. So right there kind of changes and contradicts the main story. It doesn't go in a different direction. It just happens slightly different. Okay, so right there, Escape from Gringotts, not canon, because the events are very much changed. The fact that Voldemort and Bellatrix are showing up to Gringotts while Harry, Ron, and Hermione are breaking in, it kind of makes events occur differently. But let's talk about Forbidden Journey. So Forbidden Journey is not canon. Flat out, just not canon, because you are getting a tour as a muggle through Hogwarts, which seems to take place during 5th year, but also 4th year, but also 6th year, based on the movies, because the Hungarian Horntail is just running loose through the castle, which I guess at the end of the first task, Hagrid could have, gone down into that cavern where the Hungarian Horntail fell into, captured it, and was trying to keep it as a pet, and then it eventually broke out. Okay, I can maybe give you that, but that's a stretch. But then Ron is playing Quidditch, which in the books, he is on the Quidditch team in the 5th book. But in the 5th movie, there is no Quidditch. He is not a part of it. He's not a part of Quidditch until the 6th movie. Okay, so it's either 4th or 6th or maybe 5th, and Dolores is not there. Because that's the other thing, is we do not have any teachers really showing up except for Dumbledore. And Dumbledore has both hands, so it's probably not the 6th movie where Dumbledore only has one hand. So right there, changes the story way too much. It's too complicated to figure out when it takes place, so not canon. Hagrid's motorbike adventure could take place whenever. Assumedly takes place after the Battle of Hogwarts, because he talks about Sirius's motorbike being rebuilt by Arthur Weasley, which we know for a fact is after the Battle of the Seven Potters, where Arthur says, I got the motorbike, I'm going to put it together and figure out how it works. So he could have brought it back to Hogwarts with Hagrid, who probably knows how to repair it, and work on that and have everything working again. And we get blasted into Scroot. So that could be canon. So it adds to the main story and doesn't really contradict or change anything. It just kind of takes place after. And in that situation, we're all Hogwarts students going out in the forest with the help of Arthur Weasley. So that could be canon if you wanted it to be. We do have Flight of the Hippogriff, which is also another, Care of Magical Creatures class. Very small story. It's, hey, we're going to take you on a ride with a hippogriff. Problem solved. Done. And originally there was Dragon Challenge, which took place during the 4th challenge. And it was just, hey, you either fight the Chinese Firebolt or fight the Welsh Green, which is basically just the first task of the Triwizard Tournament, where you're going against another dragon. So yeah, that can be canon, I guess. There's not really a huge story. There's no characters showing up. So it works, but it doesn't exist anymore. So it doesn't really matter. Now let's go to Epic Universe. Epic Universe is a little bit more complicated. So you have the 1920s streets of Paris and Cirque des Arcanus, which does follow the story of Crimes of Grindelwald. It takes place in there kind of after Crimes of Grindelwald takes place. You're visiting the circus. Spoilers for Cirque des Arcanus. If you have not seen the show, go and see the show. It's good. There is a cameo appearance of Newt Scamander showing up and capturing and saving all of the animals from the circus. So makes sense to me. He stops the circus and we go on about our day, which finishes up kind of that little storyline that was never covered in Crimes of Grindelwald. And then we take the Flu Network and get transferred 70 years into the future. Okay, whatever. And this is taking place after the Wizarding War with the trial of Dolores Umbridge, and we have other Death Eaters trying to break her out because apparently she was teaming up with the Death Eaters and wanted and wants Lord Voldemort to come back. She breaks into the Department of Mystery's time room and goes after a time turner. Okay, that's fine. Besides the fact that the time room was destroyed in the 5th book, it wasn't technically destroyed in the 5th movie. So, canon to the movie so far. The only weird line within this is Ron goes, she's trying to steal a time turner again. Again? I don't remember her trying to steal a time turner before. Why again? So there's another story somewhere that we don't know about. But apparently she tried to steal a time turner before. She's trying to steal it again. And then the time room gets destroyed. So we fix a problem with the fact that the time room wasn't destroyed in the 5th movie, but now it's destroyed to kind of help fix problems later on down the road with Cursed Child, which is a problem in itself. Check out the playlist and watch that. But all in all, it can kind of work, except for it does change the character's personality of Dolores Umbridge, who was never a Death Eater. She liked the pureblood mentality, but she was never a Death Eater. She, as evil as Dolores Umbridge is, she's also not evil in a way. Because if you are evil and know you are evil, you cannot perform a Patronus. But somehow, Dolores Umbridge, as evil as she is convinced that she is doing things for good and is able to perform a Patronus. Because in the canon of Patroni is dark wizards who perform dark magic cannot produce Patronus, but she can. Yes, we all know she is so evil, but what makes her even more evil is she thinks she is on the side of good. She probably knew that Voldemort was in charge of the Ministry the entire time, but just, was like, ignorance is bliss. If I don't see proof, it doesn't mean it is. But I don't think she would openly support Voldemort. So 5, does it answer questions brought up in the main story, and does it do it simply? It doesn't really answer any questions. The battle at the Ministry does kind of answer questions, is what happened to Dolores Umbridge after the Battle of Hogwarts? Did she get her comeuppance? Yes, she did. She got her comeuppance. Does it answer it in a simple way? For the most part. She got arrested. She went to jail. The Death Eaters, who somehow escaped the Battle of Hogwarts, also got arrested and went to jail. So, yeah, in some cases, these things are canon, but also at the same time, they break a lot of rules, which brings us to question 6. Does it break what was previously set up? In the books, all the time. In the movies, not as much. Like I said, in the movie, we don't know what happened to the Hungarian Horntail after the first task. So, Hagrid going, "Have you seen a dragon anywhere?" It may have happened. Hagrid may have taken that dragon in as a pet and just been like, "Oh, I went down there. He was dead. So I cooked him. Dragon steaks are very delicious." When in actuality, he's got it hidden in the Forbidden Forest. Did the time room get destroyed in Order of the Phoenix? No. So the time room would still be intact for the Battle of the Ministry. It was destroyed in the books, but not in the movies. So could be canon to the movies. But as a whole, the bottom line is the parks are not canon. I think they are in their own universe and kind of tell their own story. And is it fun? Yes, the parks are absolutely fun. If you have a chance to visit them, make sure to do it. Just walking around the shops is fun. The rides are fun too. Forbidden Journey, not as much, but Escape from Gringotts and Battle of Hogwarts are very good. I think Escape from Gringotts is probably my favorite, but that's just me. But as a whole, the Universal Studios theme parks of the Wizarding World are not canon. I think that's my final declaration, is as fun as they are and as silly they can be, they're not canon. Which, mind you, kind of stinks. It would be fun if you could go to the parks and it's like, hey, it's canon. Cool. But it's fine. Nobody's mad about the parks not following the canon perfectly. Some people might be mad that, but just remember, it doesn't affect the story. At the end of the day, the same events happen and we get to where we are. If you like what you just watched, make sure to check out more. I've got the playlist for Is It Canon here. Check it out. I'll put the video for the story of the theme parks broken down right there as well. So without further ado, stay marvelous and Nox.